Madagascar's capital, Antananarivo, was once a rich city. Towering above is the Queen's Palace, once the jewel in the Malagasy crown. Now all that's left is the stone exterior. The rest of it burnt down in mysterious circumstances more than a decade ago. In the last 6 months, Madagascar has again become the site of drama and intrigue, while 2 presidents, the old and the new, have played out a lengthy and violent struggle to win power. The turning point came in December last year, when the young mayor of Antananarivo, Ravalomanana, challenged the former Marxist military boss Ratsiraka for the presidency. Few predicted the resulting chaos. Ravalomanana claimed he won the election. Ratsiraka said he didn't. It spawned a conflict in which for 6 months of this year, Ratsiraka, controlling much of the countryside, laid siege to the capital, held by Ravalomanana. For more than half a year, Madagascar had 2 presidents, 2 governments, and most ominously, 2 armies. The siege of Antananarivo has affected everyone, even the city's transvestite prostitutes who've been hitting the streets earlier than usual in their search for clients. As soon as it's dark, Angela, Senegalese and Stephanie make their way to their favourite cruising spot, right outside the presidential palace. They are strong supporters of the man now sleeping inside.
Fa eo koa le olona manakorotana anazy dia mbola tsy fantatra le izy fa en général ohatran'ny hoe miova ianao nge dia matoa ianao mila fiovana ianao dia mety misy ny fanantena anao.
Inside the palace, Ravalomanana sits in the president's chair. Ravalomanana was a successful entrepreneur, a yogurt tycoon, before he became mayor of Antananarivo, or Tanner as it's known here. His affable manner and no-nonsense style gained him millions of admirers, fueling his political ambitions. But Ravalomanana insists that he is an accidental president.
I didn't expect to be a president, but when I started to do the politics in the mayor of Antananarivo, I thought it is very important to help the Malagasy people, to improve his life in this country. That's why I decided to go on the candidature of a president last year.
Ravalomanana stood against Ratsiraka, the military officer who staged a coup in the mid-70s and ruled Madagascar for the next 23 years. Ratsiraka was once regarded affectionately as a father figure in Madagascar. He introduced his own brand of Malagasy Marxism to the island. But economic realities soon proved that most of the country's wealth was flowing to a select few. Although Ratsiraka was thrown out during elections in 1993, he was re-elected a few years later. But by last year, the writing was on the wall.
They told us that the year 2000 is going to be ours, which is wrong. And we expected not to import 1 gram of rice by the year 2000, and none of that happened. And I don't think that we were naive at that time, but we saw there were factories, there were lots of industries that they created, but what happened is what the French say, the white elephants.
Eric Bintanana served for a few months as Minister of Commerce in Mark Ravalomanana's first cabinet. He believes that the former mayor's business credentials are an ideal qualification for the presidency.
First of all, he's a businessman, a successful businessman, and he's a self-made man, and he's a productive and very quick and efficient person when he does something. When he said, this is what I'm going to do, he's going to make it.
We believe that it will change.
Along with vanilla and precious gemstones, this man is also one of Madagascar's most valuable exports.
Ah bon? Ah, take care.
Jojob Azeb is a musician and singer, an adherent to a special style of Malagasy music known as Salagesi. Jojob is also one of the new president's most loyal supporters.
Maybe my band was the first, to help him. We were going to the north, the south, the east, the west, here in Antananarivo, to sing during his campaign. In his speech, what did he say? Justice, love. Mark Ravalomanana is a good guy.
Ratsiraka!
The initial government-supervised count of the vote in the December elections gave 46% to Mark Ravalomanana and 40% to the old president Didier Ratsiraka. It was a substantial lead, but not an absolute majority. Under the constitution, this meant going to a second round of voting. Ravalomanana cried foul, and independent election monitors agreed with him, arguing that his vote was in fact much higher.
Mark Ravalomanana won the election. I mean, he came out first and not second. So the debate is not who came first and second. We know who came first, and we expected from that he's going to be the president, and then from January it's going to be a new government, a new president, and we didn't expect the situation to last that long.
Believing that he had a clear mandate, Mark Ravalomanana had himself inaugurated as president in February to much fanfare. It was a bold move and the beginning of the end for Ratsiraka's government in the capital. Despite the intercession of devout nuns, crowds of Ravalomanana supporters began attacking Ratsiraka's ministerial offices. In March, Ratsiraka fled the capital, establishing a government in exile in the western city of Tomasina, the old president's political heartland. For a time, Ratsiraka commanded loyalty from several provincial governors and much of the army. His military strength was used with devastating impact as his soldiers cut off the capital by blowing up dozens of major bridges leading to it.
We didn't expect it. Everybody didn't expect this crisis in Madagascar. Why? Because with the Madagascar people, you say we are very, very pacific. We don't like the violence. But so few people, they don't want to leave the power. They want to keep it for his life. But it's not possible.
Although it's finished now, Ratsiraka's siege crippled the capital. With petrol selling for $12 a litre, businesses and factories were closed and food supplies dried up. Patience was wearing thin. The anger directed at Ratsiraka and his colleagues reached boiling point in March. Although Ratsiraka had already fled the capital, his Minister for City Planning was holding firm. He decided to hold this demonstration outside the ministry's central offices. Nearby, Ravalomanana supporters had gathered near the city lake and began advancing on the crowd supporting Ratsiraka. As Ratsiraka supporters ran for their lives, the crowd attacked the ministry building. As the crowd surged into the ministry offices, terrified staff were dragged from their desks. Pleading for their lives, the entire ministry staff were unceremoniously booted onto the street. Some, like the minister's personal bodyguard, were lucky to escape alive. It was a clear message for the old president, Didier Ratsiraka. In late April, Madagascar's High Constitutional Court, appointed by Ravalomanana, announced that an election recount proved that he was the clear winner, with 53% of the vote. Ravalomanana wasted no time in being inaugurated president of Madagascar for the second time this year. But the man he unseated refused to accept the verdict.
And it's a pity that nobody condemned this act of Ravalomanana, because this is a coup d'etat. There is no other name. This is a coup d'etat.
In one of his recent visits to Paris, where he has a home, Ratsiraka insisted to journalists that Ravalomanana had no right to international recognition.
On ne peut pas accepter, madame. On ne peut pas raisonnablement. Ce serait injuste, inique, immoral, amoral que quelqu'un qui n'a pas gagné au premier tour s'autoproclame président de la République et force tout le monde à accepter qu'il est président de la République élu au premier tour.
You don't need to go far in Antananarivo to see the human impact of this political drama. The capital's shanty towns, which were already desperately poor and without sanitation, are now rancid with rubbish and active breeding grounds for a range of diseases.
It was really improving. There was really good signals, good indicators of growth. And now, in a matter of 6 months, everything's just down back 10 years in the past.
Recent tests of young children in the capital's poorest suburbs revealed a disturbing trend. Malnutrition rates in children under 5 are already close to 20%, and children are dying. Being
in charge of all sorts of emergencies in Madagascar for now 7 years for Care International. I've never seen such a situation, so I'm afraid it's going to last. I don't really see how we're going to get out of this, and that's what is frightening.
Last year, John Hargraves was running one of the biggest clothing factories in Madagascar. Now it's all in danger of collapse, and he's dodging international phone calls from anxious clients.
I don't want to answer this one. Shit. Hello?
John's company Florial was making deep inroads into the international fashion market, providing to rich brand name outlets in London and New York. That's now gone, and this ghost factory is the proof.
2,300 people were actually working under this roof, and altogether we employed more than 10,000 people in Tana. These 10,000 people today are out of work. We're very disappointed because we believed in Madagascar, and we've invested heavily in Madagascar, machinery and training. It's costing us a fortune. I mean, it's millions literally every day that are just going idle, you know. It's really heartbreaking. I mean, I started this factory 12 years ago, and one of the factories, because we have actually 8 factories in the country, in Tana, and they're all completely out of work.
At Tana's central railway station, the gates are locked. Trains haven't been operating for months. Making use of the space on the now unused railway tracks, swarms of people from the nearby shanty towns try to earn money for food by selling whatever they can. Certainly there's bitterness here about the response of other African states, particularly the Organisation of African Unity, which still refuses to recognise Ravalomanana as the legitimate president and is still calling for fresh elections. But increasingly, one country in particular is being blamed for not having prevented Madagascar's descent into misery and chaos. Foreigners living in Madagascar, most of them French, demonstrate outside the French embassy in the centre of Antananarivo.
Vive la démocratie malgache! Dehors les terroristes! Ratsiraka à la mer! Ratsiraka à la mer!
France has always advocated for democracy and human rights, and we denounce their position because human rights have been violated for months now, and they do not react against this. Talking about rights of the child, thousands of children under 5 have already died because of lack of medicine, lack of food, lack of care anyway. And we have not heard a single voice from so-called democratic countries.
France's leadership role in Madagascar's recent crisis has attracted a great deal of criticism. In July, long after the United States and other Western nations backed Ravalomanana, France finally recognised his new government. Within days, Ratsiraka deserted his stronghold at Tomasina and fled to Paris with his family and closest colleagues. To what extent France has been complicit in propping up his government in exile is unknown. Certainly, eyebrows were raised in June when a plane load of French mercenaries, allegedly hired by Ratsiraka, was stopped en route to Madagascar. France claimed to have stopped them, but the incident has heightened suspicions that some elements in France have actively been conspiring against Ravalomanana.
Jacques Chirac is a friend of Didier Ratsiraka.
Does that make you angry?
Huh?
Does that make you angry?
Yeah. You know, France. I think that France is the first country of the world to speak about democracy, the human being, human rights. Huh? Why do the French government support a guy like Didier Ratsiraka? Huh? What did Ratsiraka do here now, actually?
France or any other country, any other major donor of this country could have chosen a clear position, and it would have made things much clearer and sent a message to the people of this country. They didn't.
A group of villagers put on a display of traditional music and song in central Tanna, just near the presidential palace. These performers are from the High Plateau, the same tribe as President Ravalomanana and the traditional rulers of Madagascar. But they know that their president has a long battle ahead to reconstruct a bruised and battered country. Back inside the palace, Ravalomanana carries on the duties of president as best he can, despite the enormous task ahead. But some worry that unless he can effect real change in Madagascar and fast, there's likely to be further trouble.
People are fed up. They want to change. They're not ready to accept to get back to the situation that prevailed before the election. And I'm afraid it's not going to end up nicely.
Maybe you're going to say that I'm too optimistic, but I think it can't be worse. All that can happen to us is that it's going to get better.